Hello, this is Jess with her Mood Mentor, and today I'm meeting with one of my integrative menstrual health coaching clients and PMDD rehab students, Naomi. Naomi is currently in Canada, meeting with us today from the north, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience with PMDD and also how that changed working through the program. Hi, Naomi.
Hello. Hi, how you doing?
Doing well. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Good. Yeah, me too. Just to share that story. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's maybe just start with hearing from you about what your experience was like with PMDD before we met, kind of what was going
Sure.
on.
Well, I think I just learned about PMDD just shortly before we've met, actually. I just got a diagnostic, and I think in August, and I started doing a coaching session with you, I think in December. So that was pretty recent. But from what I understand, like most symptoms that I've experienced with PMDD just go back to the first time I had my period. So like early teenager time. So yeah, my experience with PMDD was like a mix of several symptoms that were taking over my professional life and personal life, such as depression, huge anger, like an inability to control very high emotional frustration, for instance, and just being completely in bed, for 2 weeks. And I saw a crescendo past 25 years old, where those symptoms were worsened, and I couldn't understand why. So yeah, I initially thought I had, I was more prompt to be sensitive to depression, until I finally realized, little by little, that all these symptoms were linked to my hormonal cycle. Yeah.
So over a decade
Yeah.
of
Yeah, I mean, I got my period at 13 years old and 29. So we just make the calculation. It's a long time. And it's been mind blowing to, reach 30 years old almost and just learn so much about your, hormonal cycle. It's pretty insane.
Mm. Yeah, so it took a while to get an accurate diagnosis. Only within the last year
Yeah.
or so you received the diagnosis.
Yeah, so I was experiencing the symptom, and I think I reached a point in my life very low, of like several physio symptoms and physical symptoms. And at some point, you just start to realize that, okay, I can understand and take responsibility that there is something wrong with me. I have my own trauma, and I can do some therapy. But like, I don't know if some other woman having PMDD can relate to that. Like, you kind of feel there is something more to it, but you can't place what it is. But you're so alone that you just don't know how to deal with all of that at once. So I can't recall really how this click has been made for me, but I just remember hearing about PMS, learning about the symptom. And I think thanks to internet, I just, start doing one research to another. And then I came across PMDD. And at first I was like, what the hell? Like, I do remember the first time I read all the symptoms listed on PMDD. And I remember like freezing in front of my computer and being like, I just experienced, I don't know, there were a list of 27 symptoms, and I experienced every single of them. And yeah, from there started another, like challenge with getting diagnosed. So I think depending on where you live, it can be a challenge. And I had to wait about 1.5 years to finally have a health professional telling me, yeah, you got PMDD. And it was relieving, but I was also hiding another challenge after that. It's like, yes, you got PMDD, but what next now? So yeah, the realization was good, but then comes a whole work about all this flash that come in your mind, realizing that PMDD was attached to so many like event of your life. And it's still coming today, even though I've done like quite some time. I'm used to it at this stage, but you still have those flash remembering, oh, this moment, it could have been PMDD, this one too. And yeah, it's been a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as you were saying, 14 days. I mean, when we started working together, we were mapping 14 days of symptoms. And so had that been going on since you were 13 years old, and as you're in that process of healing, it does call into question, working through some of the trauma of those episodes and what was PMDD, what wasn't. I mean, it's complex and nuanced, but that's part of processing a diagnosis as well, is just working through all of that. So I'm getting goosebumps, Naomi. just hearing your story. I know so many people watching this video can relate to that experience of not knowing, and the stigma around it, and then kind of piecing the puzzle pieces together. So now what I'm wondering, and we'll get more into the depth of that conversation, but what made you reach out for support from an integrative practitioner like myself?
I'm going to try to shrink that story because it was a long process. Obviously, and I'm going to talk just from my own experience again. Like I officially from a healthcare provider got the diagnostic. So I kind of like knew on my own research, 99% that I had PMDD. But again, once you see a health professional that tells you, yes, you do have PMDD, that's one step ahead. So I got this official diagnostic, and then came this journey of trying out medical assistance to map and hide symptoms, which I learn now. So everyone does what they want. Unfortunately, I've tried several hormonal treatments that really messed up with my hormone even more. I would cry. I mean, that's just reinforced my depression like 10 times more. Came last as a solution, like the tech of SSRI. And in my own personal experience, I decided not to go in that, just because it's not like the idea of trying something that could help on my daily life. It's just, why can't I have a solution that make me understand why those symptoms are coming up? I understand why we need to hide them, but obviously if we need to hide them, there is a roots to it. And yeah, I think after doing a bunch of research, I was convinced that I could do it on my own. And it was just a lot. It was just a lot to be accountable for your own symptoms, like you have a life, you have a professional life, you have potentially a relationship, you live in this society, and it's just, I got insane. So I think I had to, and I had to accept to be vulnerable and reach out for help. And that's not always easy because there's a lot of shame that comes with PMDD. And it's kind of taboo. It's not talked about a lot. I was not at the stage in which I could talk to friends really about it, because I just had the information that I would found. So I didn't have the confidence to explain what was my condition about. So long story short, I think reaching out for help was, the last SOS call. I remember reaching out to you, and after I saw something online, and I was really in a headspace where I what else do I have to lose at this stage? It's I was not in a good headspace, and I think having someone to help you being accountable in that journey is really helpful, and I think mandatory almost, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you had tried the allopathic route of taking hormonal contraceptive, which is one of two primary treatments in allopathic medicine.
I did,
and that didn't quite work out.
No, and it's also like the idea that, I'm sure several women will experience that, is like, oh, this doesn't work, take the other one. Oh, just take this pill, Again, we can have some respect to how those things work. It's not about saying that it's all evil, but it's the idea that you come with a massive bag of symptoms and someone just throw a pill that has massive consequences on you, and you're barely understanding what you're experiencing. You're getting other symptoms to deal with. And it's it can be quite dangerous, obviously. So that was a lot.
Yeah. And that experience kind of colored the way that you took the next treatment, which was SSRI, right? You had some adverse symptoms from the hormonal contraceptive. It didn't really align with the way you wanted to address this, and you were still learning. So you reached out to a stranger on the internet, right? Skeptically.
I was really skeptical.
Yeah, of course. You should be, because you had already tried so many things at that point.
I don't even remember. I think I would have to thank the algorithm that led me to her mood mentor. I really don't recall all that sequence is a bit blurry, but I think that was the first time as well, following your content online on Instagram, that every content will make sense. I guess it's the first time that you see that finally understanding your hormonal, your reproductive system more has, in a natural way outside of PMDD, hits wave, And when you have a condition such as PMDD, yeah, there is other component coming into place. So yeah, I mean, you reach again like 30 years old and you're like, what the hell? I've never heard of that before. And your content came with a lot of knowledge in a non-condescending way, more like, here are the knowledge about the reproductive system and how it's affect your life. And you're like, holy shit. Yeah. So
yeah, why didn't we know that the implications of the implications that hormones can have on our mental health? I mean, there's just no education. So kind of you took a different approach. You decided to take a more integrative approach and looking at the root cause, both through the coaching that we did, also some functional lab testing that we're building in. But so through that process, taking a completely different approach, the education, all of that, how did that change things for you as you were continuing to experience PMDD? Kind of what happened?
So I want to say first, it was a slow process. Like, I think a lot of people try to sell is like, oh my God, you do this and this will change like within 3 months. No, it's not that. It's, I kind of was prepared for this slow process, but your mind is always like, when is the result? Where is the result? And you don't see it. What I've learned the most is those tiny habits that you change that are not too hard to do, even when you're at the lowest of your cycle on your luteal phase. That makes a huge difference, but on the long run. And that's where it was very helpful, because I think we tend as human beings to like target highest goal. We have a goal and we're like, I need to do everything perfect. And like kind of look at it in a perfectionist way. And I think that's what this program was very, at least helpful to me, is you have this bag of symptoms. You have this option to take care of in a holistic way, but there is no bridge in between. So you're like, when I'm at my lowest, what can I do? Because it's okay to do some stuff on your follicular phases, but what do you do after the ovulatory phases? When your brain is telling you to stay in bed, and just be depressed. So I think that's where, these courses and coaching were very helpful.
It gave you some small but actionable things that you could still maintain throughout the luteal phase that we did see some pretty significant results from. And it feels like a long time, 3 months, because you're suffering so badly. You're like, I just want to feel better. But 3 months in the long run is a pretty short period of time to see the reduction of symptoms that.
And yes, you do. So that's what it's saying, because like what you offer for that is like this holistic approach, and you have several core that you can take care of. So that's what I was saying earlier, where it's like when you're at your lowest, your brain is telling you not to do anything, and to, you're very, you can have the choice. It's like, okay, you don't feel like exercising, you can do this or you can do that. So there is still something to hang on to, as tiniest as it is. Everyone can deal the best they can when they are at that stage, this mindset. And I guess it's learning that there is not one way. You have all this display of self-care that you can do. That was pretty revolutionary for me, I guess.
Yeah, having options and trying different things out and seeing what was going to work for you in different circumstances. And you were traveling and you were recovering from a serious medical procedure all during this time. And so we really found things that were going to work for you in your life then that still would make an impact that you could do. And we did. So tell us a little bit about kind of the change in the symptoms. What happened with the symptoms? We started out mapping 14 days per cycle of moderate to severe symptoms. And how did that change over the course of our
So my symptoms, I think the big one that was really like messing up with my life was anger and irritability and rumination. Something that will take over. And I think I just reached a point where I think it was affecting my professional life and really friendship. But as soon as I realized that the personal relationship was getting into it, I was like, oh gosh, this is too much. So it was hard to deal with, because it's an uncontrollable emotion that comes. And it's so unpredictable. Like something tiny would frustrate you and you will have this outburst and you're like, what's wrong with me? I initially thought I was bipolar, and I was looking for symptoms online about bipolarity. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And then I learned about PMDD. So depression, anger were the highest craving. Yeah, sugar craving. I was eating my emotion, and obviously past ovulation, I will just and that will make me feel terrible. Good at the time you eat your cookie, but after, like, very terrible. So those symptoms after the program or during the program, I guess I managed to learn tools that will not make those symptoms disappear, but somewhat switch. I don't know how can I explain. Like, those symptoms were the highest, and by doing those self-care tools that I learned from this program, managed to get lower or moderate or mild, and that helped me to see other symptoms that were at the bottom. So it's like it's been a switch of symptom, and that's how I got diagnosed with ADHD after at 30 years old again. So it is positive because there is this big symptom taking over everything, and by working on it, again, they don't disappear, but you get tools to like reduce them drastically. You learn so much more about it, and I'm still on that journey now. And again, I feel as like a rebirth.
Yeah, we were able to, and we watched, because we collect data throughout this whole process. And we watched those symptoms go from 14 days. And in the last map, do you remember what we had them down to?
Yeah, like 3 days. 3 days.
3 days. So. Yeah. And every cycle is unique. So things can change. But you were empowered. Like, the power dynamic shifted from you being a victim of these very severe psychological and physical, food craving as a physical and psychological.
Uncontrollable, yeah. And sometimes you get control on this, with its own limit. And then realizing that your environment and like everything plays a part into it. And so, it's all about self-care. But back then you will hear about self-care, and vulgarly you're like, you want to throw like oh, leave me alone with this, like it's just so hard. And again, the stigma around mental health and PMDD, and it was known on this condition. But I guess, learning to have a bubble of tool that you can have access to is very, as you said, empowering. And again, those small changes make such a big difference. So like 3 to 4 days. And then you realize on your calendar, because you wrote down your symptoms, but you also see the activity that you're doing on your daily life, if you're, going out or whatever, and you start realizing more stuff that you used to lack so much back then. And that is a marking point as well, to realize that you're putting yourself out there more. As before, you will be like 2 weeks completely shut off.
Yeah. So let's dig into that a little bit more, because painting the contrast of 2 weeks in bed, severe symptoms impacting your partner relationship, your career, I mean, if you're watching this and you experience PMDD, you know exactly the depth of pain and suffering that comes with that. And so can you kind of give us a contrast of like, how is it different now that you have these tools and that you've been able to learn how to reduce and better manage these symptoms? Like, what has that changed anything in your day-to-day life, or how?
Everything.
Impact?
It changes everything. Well, first of all, like friendship or partner relationship or even family, it just gave me tool to be able to communicate about this condition and not always feeling blamed or be too self-criticized about myself when I wouldn't be able to do something. And that goes with everything, like, not showing a bailing, not being on the top at work, or having a fight with your partner. It was life-changing, to have word that I could use. And also just realizing that this condition is not me. And it's very hard. Like, this condition is taking over my own personality, and it come out with like worst symptom ever. So sorry, the question was
just how, if at all, is your life different now that you have these tools and you've been able to reduce the symptoms?
I choose very wisely pretty much everything right now. So you remove somehow, I mean, this is a process that comes with it, but you remove the toxicity that comes with everything. Again, work, family, friendship, partnership, or anything. Like, you have to focus on yourself, and you're forced to be accountable to take care of yourself, because if you don't, then those symptoms worsen, take over your life. So you have two choices: either you let yourself drown down, or you try that last piece. And it's very not easy. Again, I'm not saying this from a condescending standpoint. So is I'm able to choose work wisely. I think I switched to freelancing as a personal choices. So I get the freedom to choose when I work, for instance. Before we've met, I was on the verge of doing this and I didn't really know. I'm able to have word and tool in case my symptom of rage comes up with my partner. Like you can say also, like you do, like have a mug saying, hey, I'm little. Like you just have to understand yourself, and by doing so, give people or your outside world a key to understand yourself. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So your life now is quite different than it was.
It's 100% different. It is interesting because my mind at some dark side just want to go back to that previous self. It was like, oh, but back in the day you could do this and you didn't care and you were doing all these things, blah, blah, blah. But like when you go into that pattern, you just realize you were so unhealthy. Yes, okay, you were doing all these things and maybe you didn't, had to schedule things around your cycle. But in the meantime, the compound effect of not taking care of yourself at that time was so violent, So it's, I guess it's just your brain trying to go back to a habit that it was used to. And because it was now it's so familiar, it's trying to take you back to something that wasn't healthy for yourself. So it's interesting.
Yeah. The processes of healing and the stages that you go through aren't necessarily what you would expect on the other side, right? We just want to feel better. Our symptoms are so bad, 14 days of severe, depression and intrusive thoughts. And, we just want to feel better. What we don't realize is that process of changing that is quite deep and it comes with work, but it kind of self-actualizes you in a way. I mean, you're a different person.
Or you feel more alive, which is weird because you still have the symptoms again. But because it's so much lower, I don't want to use the word dissociating because that's not what's going on. But you're able to have your own body and those symptoms are around and you're able to name them all and be like, okay, this symptom, you're going to make me do this. You're going to make me think this. You're going to put me in this headspace. And so, in some ways you're able to remove them from we're going to like a whole abstract idea. To remove them from your own self. And I wouldn't say make them your own friends, but some ways, they're part of it. They're part of your own body and you have to share the house with them. So
you found a way to live with them, but in a way that isn't controlling 2 weeks of your life.
And that is pretty massive.
So there's so many people out there dealing with these severe symptoms, 14 even more days per month, per cycle, who can deeply relate to your experience that you're sharing here. I'm wondering just if you have a message or anything to tell them, and you can even frame it as, what would you have said to yourself 2 years ago, suffering with these symptoms monthly? Like, what do you want people to know about PMDD and what's possible?
Well, first I want to tell them to be kind to themselves. Because I don't know, as in my own experience, I was, and I'm still are to a certain extent, like so self-criticized. I just critique myself so much. So bringing some loving word toward yourself will help you a long way from now. And I guess I'd like to tell them, like the idea of setting up a goal, you have to declutter the goal. You have to layer out the goal. If you want to feel better as a bigger goal, it comes with those tiny changes that I was talking about at the beginning. And even if you don't believe it now, those tiny changes will be like mind-blowing along the way. And I guess like, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say you can feel better. There is hope. There
is hope. And I guess that through that program, you also understand that, PMDD is a multidisciplinary condition. So through all the 7 calls that you help declutter with people through this program, you also understand that you need to surround yourself not just with one doctor, but maybe it can be anything else, like a physiotherapist, a feet massage, like anything that helps your self-care with whatever income you have. and don't get stuck on one advice, from one healthcare provider. Try to extend that with several discipline.
Yeah, that collaborative care approach that we advocate for.
That is very important. That's what I understood mostly, from that program.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up today?
No, I just hope my experience here will help people watching this video, and it's a journey for sure. But it's so important to do the work. It's so important to choose yourself first. And I know those words might sound like a bit like, it's so important to do the work for yourself. But I was very skeptical. And it's doable. It takes a lot of work, but it's important to be vulnerable enough and get help from someone, I think, through that journey. So I hope I'm not ending on a too depressive note, but this is my last.
Changing anything is work. The good news is that you didn't have to change everything, right? You did have to adhere to some, we worked deeply in nutrition and in sleep hygiene. Those were the two core areas. So when we work through the process, there are 7 core areas that support our reproductive health. And we go through some many questionnaires and intake sessions to determine what's right for you to focus on. But we didn't focus on 7, right? We focused on 2, and you didn't have to change everything in your life. We made some targeted changes, which is hard. Making any change is hard, but you were able to get that result of 14 days to 3 to 4 days of symptom reduction by focusing on 2 areas. So and
you get self-esteem down the road. This is, I think, the most important, I want to add on that is I wouldn't say it doesn't really matter, but you have all the 7 core and, you do those tiny habits and change, but down the road, what you really get is self-esteem. And when you PMDD suck up and vacuum all out is self-esteem, and it's very hard to believe that you can that back, you can get it back. So that's where empowering come. And that's why I understood through this whole experience with your program was by getting knowledge, by getting more independent, by taking accountability with your own health, then you lift up your self-esteem. And that is, I think, the most important to me.
I love the way that you described that. It sucks like a vacuum out your self-esteem.
It's like you remove all your grace. It's just like, and when you're so empty, what do you fill it up with? Self-care. And it's it's doable.
And I think a lot of people, self-care is such an eye roll, right? That's why we break it down between capital S and lowercase s self-care, because people hear self-care and they're like fluffy bathrobes and manicures. And it's like, that is the type of self-care, but we're talking about supporting your body systems, both physiologically and biologically, with foundations of health, self-care, not fluffy bathrobes. Although throw that on, we'll take that. We like that lowercase self-care.
But also, self-care and understanding that all the knowledge we get is something we should learn from the start, from the get-go, and it's like it takes time. So I think there is a switch now, slowly in our society, to understand how the woman body works. But I guess I just got to accept that, I have a reproductive system, and it's so natural, not the PMDD, but you have a natural flow through all those 4 phases, and obviously this affects your choice, your work, and everything. And so you can make you get self-esteem, but you also slowly accept your gender and who you are, as a person, as a woman. You're like, okay, I'm not just a burden, to go through life, and
have some compassion.
Compassion, and it's hard to get, but you can get there, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Naomi, for coming on and sharing a bit about your experience with PMDD. It's not a fun experience, but there is hope to change it. And I know that this video is going to hopefully convey that and help other people feel seen in what they're going through.
Definitely. And the fact, I want to add, the fact that you had PMDD, I have to say, it's it's really helped through talking to someone who knows. You don't need to say words. I don't know if I'm adding too much, but it's we say one word to you and we know, I know that you knew. I don't need to over explain the thing. So from that, you're able to again target a better healthcare. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where you're crying, I'm crying with you, like
a lot of cry. Yeah. Well, it's mining now, but now remember, like,
yeah, going through the process, and it helps to have someone who's been there. I mean, it's like trying to describe what chocolate tastes like to someone who has never had chocolate. How do you explain that? It's in PMDD is the same. It's a very visceral and consuming and confusing experience, and you can't really explain it. Even trained practitioners who work in mental health and other modalities, like they haven't been there, it feels like there can be a barrier. So that is a bonus to working with a practitioner who has been through it. And there are more and more of us popping up all the time. So that's really positive.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Naomi. It was great to see you. And yeah, I'm excited to get your story out. So don't be a stranger.
I look great on the camera.
You do.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.